That's to see if yours will work okay.
Okay.
But so if you could take it out there and then I'll talk into it after I turn on
Take what out there?
the iPad.
Oh, I can't, well, I won't be able to use the iPad talking to.
But can't you hear me? If I test it?
Oh. Yeah, I can't use the audio.
No, but I mean, I thought if you went out there and you could, if I talked
Yeah.
on the microphone.
Gotcha, yes, okay. I'm picking up.
But I'm going to turn off all these other ones except for this one.
Yeah.
Because that was the problem last time. Which one was good one? It's this one?
Whichever one's right in front of where I'm sitting. Yeah.
Looks like everything that we're going to do is within compliance. Initially, St. Louis County was not signing off on it. Now they are. They're saying that what we're requesting, what the municipalities is requesting, is what is allowed under the CARES funding agreement. So I'm working on that, and I'll have the first submission on to them on Friday.
Good. Neil, do you have anything? You're muted.
Oh, sorry, nothing direct, but other than a reminder that tomorrow is the deadline for voter registration. So if you know anyone that hasn't, they can register, of course, online. They can register in person, or they can register by mail. It must be postmarked by tomorrow if they're going to do that. So again, tomorrow's the day. In terms of absentee ballot deadlines, you have to make the request by October the 21st, and they must be received by 7 p.m. on November the 3rd or dropped off by 7 p.m. on November the 3rd. So that date tomorrow is an important date. I love seeing the vote signs. Those dates are important.
Good. Well, I have a couple of things. First of all, Joanne, thank you for all your work on getting that $1.5+ million in reimbursement from the COVID funds. That's been a lot of work. What did it, 46 pages of stuff of rules and regulations and things to fill out. So thank you. And I'm going to start out by saying congratulations also to Joanne and the staff for their Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Government Financing. You know, that's the highest honor that that a governmental finance department can receive. And so we really need to say thank you for that. It really makes us shine, Joanne. Good job. I also wanted to thank Sarah and Laura for picking up on notarizing all of these ballots, because that's really been an important function. And you guys have done a great job, as have Katie and Jen, who have also prepared all of the materials and worked with you on that. So all four of you, thank you all very, very much for doing this. Much appreciated. Laura had mentioned her subcommittee working, and I'm going to try, I'll be sending out some dates probably tomorrow or the next day to try to reschedule a new meeting of for our community conversations. And we'll see what we can do more toward the last week or so of October, and we'll get that going. The Arts Commission met this morning, and we have two pieces that we are about to, hoping you all approve tonight, the lease for. We met this morning with Scott Davis and decided that the best place for Earth Rabbit is at the recreation complex. There's a wonderful median in front of the Aquatic Center, and we think that'll work because that's a big piece. It needs a big pad, and we think that'll be great. We're also, because we also have the second piece that's been offered to us, we're working with Webster University on the piece called After Hours, which is a significant piece about the role of jazz in the civil rights movement. It's an incredible piece. And we're working with them to have that located on Lockwood Avenue, and I think that'll be great. I think that's about it. Make a Difference Day is coming. We've always been a huge and active community. In many years, we've had 500 people that have participated in Make a Difference Day with all kinds of projects. And so we're urging people to do what they can in terms of public service. Oh, and finally, the last thing I wanted to mention to you too about the Arts Commission. Dave Bucket sent out this email to everybody, and one of his suggestions was a heart walk. The Arts Commission is going to begin to explore doing some sort of art walk, not a one-time event, but something that we might be able to brochure or digitize or do something with. But we wanted to thank Dave for that suggestion, and the commission is kind of excited about going there and doing something. So I think that's about it for me. So let's go on to our topics, and our first topic is a proposal to change our November 3rd council meeting. I don't think we want to cancel it. Katie and Joanne, are there some dates around there, Monday, Wednesday, probably Wednesday, that might work? Because we have to think about what's available on Zoom first.
Joanne?
Actually, I talked to Katie about this earlier, and I believe it was also the suggested date that Sarah had given in her communication. It would be Wednesday, November 4th would be the day that week that works. And I think it's a great suggestion to move it from that day so that there's not concerns with anybody actually having to rush back and forth, and so that they have adequate time to vote.
Will that work for everyone to move it back one day till November 4th? Yes, thumbs up. All right, let's go ahead and do that then. Thanks very much, Sarah, for the suggestion. All right, next topic, we're going to turn over to Dale. Dale, you want to talk about assigning one of our police officers to the DEA enforcement group?
Yes, I'll be very brief about it. Hopefully everybody received the memo that I sent to Joanne. Based upon our work and cooperation with not just the DEA, but several federal agencies and also our reputation, they have an opening for a municipal officer on their drug task force, and they've invited us to detach one of our officers and assign it to the task force. Obviously, one of the things I was concerned about would be the cost of it, but looking at the asset forfeitures averaging over 3 years, it appears that we probably would come out a little bit ahead on it. There'd be a benefit to us in that we would get a lot of information in terms of the drug activity in the St. Louis area, and more specifically, the stuff in and around our community. We'd have priorities in terms of investigations. We'd be able to assign, the detective would get a lot of experience there. It also offers a position where someone could get that type of experience and be able to diversify from something other than uniform patrol. So that would help us retain and recruit good employees. So all those things combined, I feel like it's a positive. It would be a good idea, a good thing for us. It's something I talked to Joanne, something we would monitor year to year to make sure that it's not something that would be cost ineffective for us, and was also working well. So in any case, it's something that would require either a resolution or an ordinance. I'm not sure which. I've talked to the DEA, and we'll work on a contract, but it would require approval of the council. So I want to make sure before we did that the council was aware of it and also approved of doing that.
Questions for Dale, comments?
Dale, my only question is, what impact will it have on our current staffing and shifts to move one of the officers to this designated task?
It won't specifically impact patrol. What we will do is we've had somewhat of a reduction in traffic enforcement because of the current environment. So what we will do is we'll move an officer out of the traffic division, reduce that by one person, and again, we'll take a look at it, what the asset forfeitures are. If it appears that we're getting what we think that we're going to get, then we will replace that position so that we'll have an officer back on the street. If not, we'll probably pull back from it. So it would cut the staff a little bit short for about 6 months, but as far as the actual uniform patrol, it's not going to impact upon, it'll have a very small impact on that.
So the officer would work around the municipal area, or I mean, logistically wise, or location, what was giving them exposure to other jurisdictions too, or I'm not clear how.
They work a lot like the St. Louis County and Muni Multi-Jurisdictional Task Force, which is focused on St. Louis County. This unit, Drug Enforcement Administration, is focused on the St. Louis region, so it actually would expand out to St. Charles County, Jefferson County. I'm not sure what the county is in Illinois, but the one adjacent to St. Louis City. They also work in St. Louis City, so it's a much larger area, but it's also a much larger task force. It would have a bigger impact upon the drug activity and drug use in the region than what the county task force does. I mean, an example is there's a long-term investigation. Unfortunately, we can't publicize whenever we have something going on, but recently we made the 4 arrests. It was an investigation that went for about 18 to 24 months. We had a lot of complaints from drug activity in the area around Ivy Crockett Park. So this is similar in that it's a much bigger area.
Dale, if I remember reading correctly, they'll take care of all of overtime up to what, $19,000, was it?
That's correct.
And once, if we reach that point, then it's on Webster.
Yes, but they're not likely to reach. I mean, that's they look at those figures based upon what they expect it to be, and actually, it's more than that. Our officer our detective that's in the St. Louis County and Muni Drug Task Force, they work with the federal agency as well. And anytime there's overtime with the federal agency, the federal agency does pay their overtime. We have to fill out the paperwork. They pay for it. He's never really approached anything close to 19,000 in overtime. So I would not anticipate that would go past that level.
Thank you.
But even in adding that to, so the cost is estimated at $99,350, and then if worst case you did get to the 19,000, that's like 118. But we're anticipating potentially a share of 134 from the annual forfeitures. Am I reading that?
Yes, based upon the history of the asset forfeiture with that task force, it's even if it went over a little, we would still come out ahead. Again, the same thing with the task force. Our goal isn't to make money off of it, but it's nice that we do get some extra funding that we could spend on items that we wouldn't be able to otherwise budget for, the same as the county drug task force. But it should be pretty close to cost neutral based upon the history of the asset forfeitures.
So Dale, would that be full-time? One officer's full-time duty?
Yes, he would be detached to the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Okay.
He would be deputized as a federal officer.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think this is a really good opportunity for one of our police officers to become part of that. And it's a good opportunity for us to be connected with this group that does good work. So thank you. All right. I think what you're hearing, Dale, is there anyone opposed to this? Okay, then we're going to move on. The next agenda item is the Architectural Review Board proposed amendments, and you have a memo somewhere in your materials from Mara suggesting a couple of amendments that we should really talk about.
So the memo that we put in your backup was to try to explain a little bit about something that we discussed more than a year ago with the City Council. It was regards to making some amendments that would allow additional projects to be pre-approved or administratively approved and not even have to go to Architecture Review Board. When we made a discussion and made some amendments a number of years ago, we started out with hey, what about a certain square footage that's not visible from the front, could be reviewed by staff and not have to go to ARB. At that time, I think there was a lot of wariness about how far we should go with that. So we settled on a 200 square foot maximum, which means it's a pretty small addition to the rear. And we made some other things that didn't have to go back to ARB that Signs have been going to Architecture Review Board. Fences in historic districts have been going to Architecture Review Board. So we did get quite a bit off of their plate, which was great. But I don't think we anticipated the amount of projects that are coming into us now, even with COVID and trying to do this via Zoom. I appreciate that Councilmember Smith has seen that we're trying really hard to get these working. But one of the reasons why the meeting is only 20 minutes long is because staff is spending hours and hours on the phone ahead of time before the meeting, going back and forth between the Architecture Review Board and the applicants. And in most cases, because my staff isn't trained as architects, it actually is my time making those phone calls. So we've been really trying to figure out some better ways where we could administratively approve some of these projects and then not have to be going back and forth between ARB members because the way the code is written, they can't talk to each other. Outside of an actual meeting, they are required to hold that meeting in the public. And although Zoom meetings have been working fantastic for a lot of our boards, commissions, and other things, Architectural Review Board's been the most difficult one. They're used to sitting around a table with the drawings there. They're used to interacting on a different means where they can talk to the drawings, and that's been pretty difficult. And even if we make some changes in the next few months, I think that what we have found is that there are quite a few things that we could potentially pre-approve or I should say administratively approve without having to go to Architecture Review Board if we could make a few of these changes. So if you look in the memo, some of the things we had suggested were larger rear additions, going up to maybe 400 square feet versus 200 square feet. Again, one's not in a historic district. If it was the addition is not visible from the street. Also having some clarification, there's a lot of rear decks. People are building pretty big decks, and a 300 square foot deck that's a pretty simple deck. I can't administratively approve, and it has to go to ARB. There's a lot of people putting a front porch on or expanding their existing front porch. Front porches are becoming the place to hang out during COVID times. And right now, anything on the front, I can't administratively approve. So for example, I had a gentleman come in today and really he's just taking the existing roof line, expanding it just a little bit and adding another set of columns. And it's on the front, and I can't say, oh, that looks great. It's well drawn. And then a couple things related to windows. Again, windows on houses where over the years there's been spotty changes, and then they're going to try to clean it all up and make all the windows look the same. If it's a change on the front elevation, it's something that we can't administratively approve. So those are a few of the things that I'd like to potentially address, but I wanted to get feedback from the council. It's been a while since we discussed this, and there are new council members on.
So let's take these one by one that you've talked about or recommended here. Or should we take the easy ones first? I think the 400 square foot is probably the hardest one to talk our way through. Maybe something like window changes.
So you're saying, Mara, you would only approve a window change if they're trying to consolidate the different styles that they have. That someone may have, make them.
So right now, when someone comes in and if they're matching the existing style of what they have, or even one window is I'm going ahead and administratively approving it. I'm not actually sending those to ARB, but we have had a few where it's the whole house is a hodgepodge and they want to do something, but it's a change on the front elevation. And so those would probably be the ones that would expand. But right now, even technically, I shouldn't be approving ones where they're going in and changing out windows where one or two changes. The code's written.
Why in God's good name would we even want this to go to the ARB?
Right, I agree.
It's how the ARB was originally written.
Yeah,
So
it seems a little overprotective.
Yeah, and it's onerous. It's onerous. And in fact, I just had a property owner complain specifically about that very reason. I
windows.
mean, that's ridiculous. Well, so are you saying that's something we can say, okay, we don't need to continue with that practice for this item here with these windows?
Well, I would think if it's, I mean, I'm going to put some clarifications on it. And Mara, maybe you're thinking this is already in place, but if you're simplifying the number of styles and, so you're reducing the number of styles and it applies to the front of the house, that probably is okay. But I would think if you're going to introduce a new style to the front of the house, that would need to go to the ARB.
If it's not in the historic district.
So if it's not in a historic district, there is still an impact to windows. So if a window is an older 3/1 style, and they are planning to take out all the grill patterns, it does make a pretty significant change to the overall look of the house. And so what we've been saying to people is, if you are matching your existing style, and it doesn't have to be the expensive, making the windows with the actual grills, it's putting a grill pattern onto it so that you're still seeing what it looks like. For those, we're just saying if someone is matching the existing style, we're good to go. We're not sending them to ARB, even if it's on the front. If right now there's 1 or 2 windows that had been changed out at one point in time and are looking a little different, we're working with them on those. But if it is a completely significant style change, so for example, I think we had one maybe a year ago, and it had a very distinctive 6/6 window pattern, and they were taking all the grills out, and it just didn't match the style of the house at all. We sent it to ARB, and they had a conversation with them about it. So those are some that we have sent before.
So was that in a historic district or no?
It was not in a historic district.
Okay, so it was not in a historic district. And the owner of the property decided that that's what they wanted to do with their home, with their windows.
But then again, there's a conversation that's usually happens with the Architecture Review Board about what the overall architectural elements are and how they look. So I'm not saying we're removing, you still have to get a permit for windows.
Right.
We do permits for windows. Mm-hmm. But right now, if there's a style change and I would be in agreement with it, I can't administratively approve it. If there's a style change that I don't agree with, I can still send it to ARB.
So the agreement, so your decision to agree or not agree is based on what?
Usually it's based on the architectural style of the house.
Well, more question. Well, in my few meetings I've attended, I sometimes I hear it'll make it look nicer. It's not what the owner wanted, but it'll make it look nicer. So based on what is regulated and what makes it look nicer.
That's the $1 million question of the ARB, Emerson. Oh my God, you nailed it.
I mean, in some cases, I think, well, that's what the owner wants, and it's all within statute. With why don't they approve it? Well, because I don't like it that way. I think it looks better if we did 3 windows instead of 2 windows and things of that nature. So is that what you're trying to get around?
No. It's not that. What I'm trying to do is that there are some very basic ones that are simple and straightforward. When the ARB looks at it at the plans and says, oh, it would be really nice. It looks like they haven't drawn this completely and it has this detailing. And over here, it looks like there might be room for a band board. And many times I make the call to the architect and say, hey, did you intend to put the band board on all 3 sides of the house or 4 sides of the house? You only drew it on 1. Does this window have this additional trim? When I have those conversations with them, most often they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I'd drawn it wrong. Or, oh, shoot, I didn't think about that. That actually matches the rest of the style. In 90% of the cases, all of them are like, wow, that's great. I didn't think of that. Thanks so much. And we all move on our merry way. It's in the 10%, very, very small 10%, where someone does say, well, that's not what I want. And we've had the conversation with the ARB, and then if the ARB says, okay, we get it, we understand it, you're not in a historic district, there's not a set of guidelines, we just wanted to have that conversation with you and see if you were interested. And then they move on and they vote, and we're fine. So it is a very, very rare few cases, and I'm trying to take care of the really simple ones and keep them from having to even have the conversation or attend a meeting at ARB.
And would those simple ones, would you approve them and not even submit them to the ARB?
Well, those are the things that I want to look at. One of the options would be that I could send the packets to the ARB, and we'd have to decide because it's a lot more work on the ARB. What we've been doing right now during COVID is we send the packet to the ARB. The ARB members, one by one, email me their comments. I consolidate the comments from all 5 members. Then I see where there are consistencies and inconsistencies. Then I call the architect and I talk through, and if I get agreements with them, sometimes they submit a new drawing to me. Sometimes they ask another question. Sometimes they clarify something. Then I email the individual ARB members that had those questions. They email them back to me. And then once I get consensus from all 5 members, we've been moving it through. So for example, this meeting that lasted 20 minutes Thursday night was one project was left. I got 11 projects pre-approved. But that conversation, that set of steps, I had to do for all 11 of those.
And I guess that's, would you need to send those pre-approvals to the ARB to get them going?
So one option would be that we send it to them and, and do some basics on it. The question would be whether they are allowed to at all talk amongst each other. I don't know if we can do that legally. I mean, it's not in historic districts, so maybe we can. Trying to see if there might be a better way. What it could be is that we could triage them, essentially, that my staff and I could look at them. We could say, oh, this one's well drawn. The drawings are understandable. It shows the materials. Let's send this on for what we would consider an administrative approval. Get the ARB to look and see if we missed anything and be able to move those on their merry way. So there might be a way that we could do those. There might even be 3 levels. One's where you say, sure, staff can approve it without sending it to them. Another group that might go to ARB and we ask them to just get back to us, and then try to move those through. And then the ones that we get a lot that are, they just don't want to do the drawings. They just don't want to actually make something that's readable, that's understandable about what kind of project they're trying to do. Those are the ones we end up spending a lot more time with ARB and maybe send those on to ARB.
So what you're saying is it's not just changing what you can and cannot approve, but it's also something about process here, Mara, that you're looking for a process that during COVID that might make this easier if people could talk with each other.
I don't even know if it's just during COVID. I'm wondering if there is a way to continue it beyond on a very small scale and small level.
Have you spoken with the members of the ARB to get any ideas about this?
I've had some small comments with them, but I wanted to see what whether council wanted me to go ahead and have a more detailed conversation with the ARB members about their thoughts.
I would suggest it.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense to me to.
Why are we putting policy decisions in the hands of the ARB members?
Because they know what the
decisions.
I mean, we could say that about anything though, right? I mean, we're the elected officials. We have to make these policy decisions based off of. I'm okay with the conversations, but it just seems like we just keep on going around and we keep going, oh, they're the experts. They're the experts. Well, of course they're the experts. They're the architects on the architectural review board. But we're the ones that determine what actually goes to the ARB and what doesn't go to the ARB.
You have the final say. But it would be good, they've given some feedback on the process we've been using. And they've had some good ideas as we have tried to move through the last few months. And I would also want to know if they even want to take on, you know, they've been doing extra work too by having to get me their comments 4 days before the ARB meeting, which they've never had to do before. And they have been troopers at it. We deliver the packets to them on the Thursday before or even Friday morning. They've been spending their weekend and hours going through those packets and getting me comments on Monday.
And there's no doubt that, I mean, I appreciate, and I'm sure everyone in Webster Groves appreciates the hard work that people are doing during this pandemic. It seems like, though, the mayor's comment's relatively accurate, that is there a way within the Sunshine Law that we can get the ARB to meet or to have a more fruitful discussion without spending so much staff time, which was originally just a straight ARB meeting?
If I may.
Go ahead, Neil.
There is within 610 a way to do that. And again, by separating the things and leaving the ultimate decision to a public meeting, you're not getting to a point where you're going to run afoul of Sunshine. So we can write that up in such a way that we could clean up the procedures to make sure that we're consistent with Sunshine.
Good.
So that would definitely help solve some of your, like the
Process
constant back
things.
and forth that you're dealing with right now,
Right.
Laura, right?
Laura, you had,
I was just going to say, and we're focusing on what the ARB members need and what the planning department needs as well. And I think those are both incredibly important things. But let's not make this more complicated for applicants either. As we're figuring out process, remember that's who we're serving. And I know we all know that, but we seem to have shifted our conversation away from the actual applicants and to the other people involved in this process.
Thank you, Laura, because I was just becoming confused at what the original objective of the question was. And I thought that it was to simplify the process for applicants when they come in and they're wanting to address their windows, because we're on the window item now, right? And so I thought that that's what we were talking about. Are we okay with simplifying the process, especially with reference to things that do not that are not in historical districts, so that we can accommodate the homeowners, our citizens, in facilitating this process? We have to have a permit for windows because we want to make sure they're safe. We want to make sure, you know, but I thought the question was, do we want to simplify this process by allowing you guys to make its administrative decisions rather than moving those on to architectural review?
I would say that I think this is the third meeting you guys had the pre-approval, Mara?
No, we've been doing this. I think we're on.
Well, it's the third meeting that I've sat in, I guess.
Yeah.
And all the pre-approvals go through without a problem. I mean, they just I make a motion to approve 156 Euclid, somebody second, and they move on to the next one.
Because I'm giving them the pre-approvals ahead of time.
Yeah.
After working with the applicants.
Yes. So, but you've done all the work and
Well, and the ARB has given us the information too.
Yeah.
However, there are a number of projects, again, going back to my original memo, I'd like to be able to change things so that window changes, some rear decks and ramps, some larger square footage that are in keeping architecturally with the house, per staff's review, would not have to even go through the process of going to ARB.
I would say talk it over with the ARB and see if they have any concerns. If not, I would say yes, let's look at it.
my one concern is the 400 square feet. That's a big addition. And even though you can't see it from the street, if you live in a neighborhood where, you know, your neighbor is 6 feet away from you, your neighbor is the one who has to live with the look of that addition. And we don't really have any standards for that. I mean, if we had some standards, it would be easier. But now we're saying it's up to the staff. So if my neighbor comes along and wants to put up a box without any windows in it, there's,
Then
how do we,
We'd
how
send
do,
it to ARB. Staff would send it to ARB.
but who determines on the staff that that's not appropriate? I mean, that's what I'm looking for is, you know, maybe we trust you, but let's say that we hire somebody else who comes in. They think it's perfectly fine to put up a 20 by 20 box without one window in it. Would we be giving them the ability to say yes to that? I'd just like to see some standards.
This is the same gamble that we're taking by just sending it to the ARB, though. Just the difference is there's more individuals. It's the same gamble because we don't have any regulations on a lot of this stuff, and it's really what Emerson was talking about is like what you like.
That's not, but David, the architects are regulated. They have their license regulated. But
think, just like in any profession, right, Pam? Just like, I mean, we saw this. Yes. And I'm just saying, I'm just trying to point out a differential here because just like when you had Ken Burns on the Architectural Review Board, his view and interpretation of the architectural guidelines is different than another architect's standard. So you could put 6 Ken Burns and you're going to get a different decision than the current 6 members potentially on that ARB right now.
Go ahead, Pam.
That's a personality thing and not a principle thing, first of all. And then the other thing is, I think homeowners benefit from going to the ARB often. Sometimes they do have little things and, you know, they've drawn it themselves or they've gotten so-and-so their buddy who's a contractor draw it up. And the ARB notices things like, let's say, you know, the difference between a 6-inch post and an 8-inch post, you know, depending on the height of it, it makes a difference. And so what I think if there's a way to do it so that, you know, we can maybe like standardize some of the things like the windows, but other things that do have aesthetic
implications.
Yeah, implications like the front porch. You know, I trust Mara, but I don't maybe, you know, trust so-and-so, you know, 5 years from now. So if there's a way, I do agree in simplifying it, but I do think we can't knock the benefit of going to the ARB when you have a simple project.
That's one thing that I've been to some of the ARB meetings because I just thought I needed to know a little bit more about how it operates. But having never been the liaison, if I'm listening to this conversation, I'm not really sure when the ARB tells me as a homeowner, I have to do something differently versus when they give me advice versus when they say, attaboy, go do what you've done. That is not at all clear in this conversation. Administrative approval to me seems like a process that is much clearer. And by saying, and I think Mara should revert to the ARB if she wants to, but I also think if the homeowner has been talking with Mara and doesn't get anywhere, they can ask for it to go, they should be able to ask for it to go to the ARB and benefit from that advice. But it's still unclear to me what is a you must versus a here's what we think you should.
I think it's a nuance from them practicing their profession. They know how to do it. And then when they're in a group and in a team, it works. I mean, it really does work. I've only seen, I mean, for my 1.5, 2 years on ARB, you know, I think they were very good at helpful, but they also came down on some contractors that were trying to like slip something in that wasn't kosher, you know. And I think, but that's bigger. That's a bigger than what we're trying to, what Mara's trying to get past.
How many projects are very small? And they're very small. And the ones that I've noticed in my little 3 or 4 meetings is that it's well, did you consider making this a 6-inch board versus an 8-inch board? I think it might look better. You know, sometimes the owners say, all right, if they'll get it approved, I'll make it a 6-inch board. And they move on, but they really wanted an 8-inch board. So I like Mara's idea to try to streamline it. And if you're going to build a 400 square foot unit, I don't think the average person not gonna put any windows in it, but I think they have enough expertise on their, in their department to make those decisions.
Okay, so let's see what we can do to wrap this together. Maybe Mara and Neil, the ARB, can have a conversation about process, okay, and making the process easier. And then Mara, I think we're hearing definitely the window changes. I don't see anybody on here being, anybody opposed to making some changes in allowing administrative approval of window changes.
Not a problem.
I think we should do whatever we can do to make it easier for the homeowner to
Yes.
apply for a project.
You know, Emerson, you bring the point, correct me if I'm wrong, Mara, but isn't one of the points of the ARB to preserve the character of the community?
Yes, that's correct.
So the ease of this process is not necessarily a dictate or a mandate of the ARB.
No, what staff is trying to look at is that there are many projects that come in that are preserving the character. People in Webster Groves take the time to hire someone to draw things up that do match the existing, that do provide a consistency in the architectural style. And the hard part is that I have to say to those projects that come in, I'm really sorry, you have to wait 2 more weeks and then you have to sit in a meeting. When very often it's a perfectly fine project. But yes, it's important to, I think, balance both things. And I know it's difficult to say, let's make changes. It's Mara's here now, and maybe it's not going to be me. It's going to be someone else, hopefully more 15 years down the road, not 5. But when I look at, my staff really have, I hear them when they're talking to people and saying, just know the ARB is probably going to ask you about this very blank wall, and the ARB is going to ask you about the detailing. You don't have a lot of detail on your windows. The staff has gotten good at that. They're just not at the level of being able to have some of the conversations with the architects about what our ARB has come up with. So for a few of the items, if we could streamline it a little bit, it would provide a little more ease, take a few things off the ARB agenda, and try to keep that balance. And we always had in the code that we could still send something, like someone sends a 200 square foot addition and it has no windows and it's concrete walls. I still have the ability to send it to ARB. It's more a little bit, and I think it's very important. I think Laura brought up an important idea, is that they would still, if they disagree, they could still go to ARB. I think we've never thought about it in that way, but I think that could be very important. If they disagree with staff, when we are trying to administratively approve it, that they could still go to ARB.
Well, and I think I'm just trying to wrap in my own head what the argument is here, but it seems like a concern is whenever it is, there's no longer a Mara in City Hall, that we might have to, whatever council's there is going to have to come back and change the rules again because they don't like the person that replaced you or like the decisions that are being made. In other words, like, are we giving too much leeway to the administrative body right now without taking into the repercussions? And I think that the mayor's point is valid. If that's the concern, wouldn't it make sense just to have a set standard across the board that we all agree on as council, or that we have elected to proceed with? That way, whether it's done administratively or done through the ARB, there's at least a set standard for everyone to follow.
Well, if Mara, do you mind? So David, I get your point, and I think we're also talking sort of about apples and oranges here, because we're talking about that in terms of more of what an addition would look like. Do we have to write standards about what a ramp might look like for every single neighborhood, or a slight change in front porch? So I think if we're going to start talking about standards, let's limit ourselves to things that are very important that we actually set them for, and let the department take care of I mean, I still remember the poor person, was it a year ago, who had to wait for weeks and weeks to get an accessibility ramp on their house because of the way this process is set up. I think finally, Mara, you sort of bent the rules a little bit to make sure that it could happen, but that's ludicrous. I mean, there's things that we should be doing, I think, to make this easier, both for the planning department as well as our residents. And in the end, they do that also for the ARB. Now, if we want to talk about standards, that's a big discussion, and we can have that discussion. That's fine with me.
Well, no, I agree with you, Laura. I think that anything to make it easier, but isn't it, the problem that we're running into, it seems like the two diverging paths is that no one on, like, we're not agreeing on what the quote unquote the standards are. You know what I mean? So like I guess that's the question that I feel like is going around and around on council right now.
I think what Laura's point is one that is very valid. One of the bullet points that Mara has given us is about rear decks and ramps and changes to front porches. Those are pretty easy things for us to say, go for it. I wouldn't have any trouble with someone on staff determining whether a rear deck or rear porch or something is just fine. What I'd like some standards about for me is a big hulking 20 by 20 addition on the back of a house that the next door neighbor has to look at. That's my one concern. But windows, ramps, porches, what do you think? Pam?
The front porch thing is the only bugaboo for me, but you know, I'm not seeing what's coming through there as far as making changes. So yeah. What do you mean by front porch changes, Mara? Do you know off the top of your head? Like,
yeah, typically people are, what's been happening lately, it's not putting a whole big front porch on the whole front of the house. It's people saying, oh, I already have a big concrete stoop, and now I want that space big enough that people can stand under and stand on my porch before you walk through the door. So it's more people just expanding ever so slightly on the same architectural style, but just making it a little bigger. That's a lot of what we have coming in right now. I think I had 3 of them in the last couple of months.
I mean, if it were me, I don't think I would do the front porch because it seems a little too open. I mean, they have to do a drawing anyway to get it built.
We require them to do a drawing. Whatever they would have submitted to ARB is what we have to see. Right. We don't let them get around that piece because we still have to review something. So they still have to do the drawing, and typically what happens now is someone comes in with their ARB submittal, and we do a quick look through, and we go, oh, okay, you're not in a historic district. Oh, okay, now let's see. How many square feet is this project? Okay. And then when we look at it, our problem is we have a number of people who are at that 250 square feet. And it's 1 story and not even 2 stories. But I think there's a very divergent, there's either the people doing the 900 square foot addition, or they're doing the 250 square foot addition. There's not as much the in between.
Mediums, yeah.
And so I've had a few architects who have literally said, oh, it's 200 square feet. Let me skim off the 20 extra square feet they wanted because I don't want to have to go through the ARB process. And I want to be able to say, oh, no, don't do that. Don't sacrifice that little bit of square footage just to skip ARB, which is why we started bumping it to 400.
I'm confused why they want to skip ARB.
Because a lot of people just don't want to go through that extra 2 weeks of process.
So it's a timing thing more than anything?
I think sometimes it's a timing thing. You know, I'm not hearing as much the ARB is horrible anymore. You know, it was always the folklore. And I would try to explain to someone, well, when were you last here? And some people would say, well, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And I'm like, no, we're different now.
And Mara, how often do they meet? I mean, so what if they meet, if they miss the most recent meeting, how much longer do they have to wait? How often does the ARB meet?
So they meet twice a month. And typically if they've missed a deadline, they have to wait about 2 weeks. Every once in a while, they have to wait 3 weeks. Just depends on the month. When we have those longer months with that odd extra week, just like your city council, sometimes you have an odd extra week in there. So they meet twice a month. And so it can add, if you've just missed the deadline, it can add 2 weeks or 3 weeks to your project.
All right, we
Or
are
you're just
approaching.
looking for us to say, go and talk to the ARB about it?
I was looking for you to say, go ahead and maybe draft up some amendments and bring them to us as a public hearing so we can discuss them.
I think we're all okay with that.
Yeah.
It is for you to continue to move in that direction. All right, we are close to 7:30, so we have no appointments to boards and commissions. We will do our closed session later. If anyone needs a 2-minute break.
Yes, I do.
Yes, okay. Take a 2-minute break, folks. Run, and we'll be back. Right, if we got everyone back with us. I'm going to go ahead and open the regular session. And I want to welcome everyone to this city council meeting. And we welcome your questions and your ideas and your comments. And we ask that you limit them to 3 minutes so that we can complete this agenda in a reasonable amount of time. We have some new regulations and some new means for remarks of visitors. And submit anything to be read at the council meeting for a public hearing or remarks of visitors by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. In addition, if you'd like to speak during either remarks of visitors or the public hearing, please use the raise your hand button on Zoom, which is on the bottom. You will be called upon when it is your turn to speak. To ease identification, please use your first and last name when signing on to the Zoom session. Public comment will be limited to the designated time frame during each public hearing, and remarks of visitors will be limited to 3 minutes. And with that, we'll call this meeting to order with a roll call.
Mayor Welsh,
Here.
Councilmember Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss,
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
All right, we're going to start this evening with the first public hearing, which is a public hearing about 23 West Lockwood Avenue. It's an application by Rob Golterman, DCM Management Company, on behalf of Elias LLC for an amendment to the existing PC Plan Commercial District to allow a coffee shop, no drive-through use on the approximately 0.32 acre tract of land located at 23 West Lockwood. And Mara is going to go ahead and make that presentation.
Thank you. So this evening you have before you an amendment to an existing PC planned commercial district. You can see on the first slide here that the PC zoning is shown in purple. It is a recent change that was made just in the last 2 years. The rezoning was made in regards to a planned commercial development that would include both a Regions Bank and then a second retail or an office use type building. You can see here that the surrounding zoning uses are D commercial, as well as some A4 single family residential. A little bit of history on the site. There was an existing structure that had been there since 1865 that was converted to a mortuary. And then 1950s, it was zoned D commercial. In 2004, there had been a historic district nomination for the overall area that this was located within. In 2016, the Gerber Chapel Mortuary had closed. And in 2017, the Historic Preservation Commission approved the certificate of appropriateness to demolish that structure. The rezoning went before the City Council in October of 2018 and was rezoned to a PC planned commercial district. And then the final development plan went before the Plan Commission in January of 2019. Since then, the first phase of the development has been constructed, which is the Regions Bank. The photos that you see here include looking at both the site that is in question as a part of the amendment, that is the grass area to the east of the Regions Bank building. The two photos on top are looking west and east down Lockwood. In the lower left corner is a view looking north from Lockwood into the second phase site. And then the lower right hand is looking northeast into the site. We always look at the comprehensive plan analysis when we are looking at anything that changes in terms of rezoning. Although this is just a minor amendment to it, I always try to make sure that this is important, that we identify that the comprehensive plan identified that this was supposed to be uses in our walkable Old Webster district that further the planning efforts for their commercial area. And the Old Webster area was identified in the Development Foundation Plan as a pedestrian-friendly commercial area of the city, and was supposed to include addressing things with retail niches and office employment uses. We determined that at the time in 2018 that this was in compliance with the comprehensive plan when the rezoning occurred. And the overall area and the intent is that it's supposed to provide in PC for modern shopping and office centers of integrated design. The development plan, which was approved before the Plan Commission, showed two structures similar in height, one being slightly larger than the other in terms of overall square footage, with access both from Lockwood and from Moody. And the two access points have a parking lot in what is the rear, essentially, of what would be our main street through Old Webster of Lockwood. And there is a drive-up VTM machines in the back of the bank building, and then the overall parking lot is shared between the two structures. When we look at the request that came before us, we determined via staff that this was a minor amendment that could come straight to the City Council for review. In the original rezoning, applicant is allowed to pick from the permitted and conditional uses in a C and D district. They had picked a small number of uses, and staff had added a couple more uses during the rezoning in 2018 that was supposed to address and bring together some potentials for what could go into the buildings, both as first tenants and then any future tenants after that. Their permitted uses are a financial institution, including banks, savings and loans, stock brokers, and title companies. Also allows for drive-in establishments, which was related to the bank itself. Store or shop for the conduct of a retail business, office for the conduct of any lawful business or professional pursuit, personal, family, and household services, and bakery whose products are sold only at retail on the premises. The additional use that they are asking for is a coffee shop, no drive-through. They're asking for the front portion of the building to be a coffee shop, which is the area that faces a small patio area onto Lockwood, and then the rear portion of it would be for office uses. One of the things that we looked at, which was the important element to look at, and if this use was added, whether it would have an impact on the parking. The overall parking on the site in the approved ordinance was total square footage of all structures shall not exceed 6,250 square feet, or that which would maintain a minimum on-site parking ratio of 4 parking spaces per 1,000 of commercial space, whichever is greater, provided that the retail building shall not be less than 3,000 square feet. They have proposed the retail building to be over 3,000 square feet, and the overall amount of parking that is required based on the square footage of the two structures is 26 parking spaces. That wouldn't change whether the use was all office or whether the use was a combination of office and a coffee shop, or office and a retail space. Access and circulation is going to remain the same. Nothing is going to change in terms of the access onto the site. Essentially, everything has been built with the exception of the second building, the retail building. We would be keeping and remaining with all setbacks that were already established in terms of the overall development of this site in relationship to the PC planned commercial district. And the building has already gone before the Architectural Review Board, has already been approved for the elements related to what it is going to look like. And in fact, the building has already been through plan review for its building permit. They would then come back in to make some changes related to the interior if this use is approved. Before I go into the staff recommendations, do the council have any questions?
I have one, Mara. So where it says retail, we're really talking office use, right?
Well, oh, you mean where the building said retail?
Mm-hmm.
They used that just as a preliminary when they were going through the rezoning a couple years ago. That was where we would have the conversation about what all the uses were that would be allowed in the district. So office was another use that could be allowed.
Laura, I just wanted to know why, I mean, I think I know the answer, but why is there a new category for coffee shop when it is kind of essentially item C?
Yeah. So when we do the zoning ordinance, you do try to pull apart other elements that could need additional parking. Coffee shops, restaurants, other elements like that, many times do require additional parking if you go by a straight parking code. The way that this zoning was put together, it was put together to kind of assume that it could be a mix of retail and a mix of office uses, because this is supposed to be a mixed use district. So instead of doing the 3.3 per 1,000 for office and a 4 or 5 per 1,000 for a coffee shop or a restaurant, we averaged that out with the Plan Commission in their approval and approved it at 4 per 1,000. So they had to have a little bit more than they normally would for office, and about the same or a little bit less than they would for something that might be a higher intensity use. And so coffee shop can be at a higher intensity use in terms of the overall numbers of people that come in and out at key points in the day.
Than a regular shop.
Correct.
Retail shop.
Yes. Large amounts of people coming first thing in the morning, coming, you know, at key points in time, and it can have a slightly bigger traffic impact. So it usually requires more parking. But because of the way we approved the ordinance, it's not going to impact the parking.
Mara, and maybe this is a question eventually for the developer. I'm curious about why we have no drive-through. You know, it's one of the things in this town that's missing. And I was just curious, is it us that discouraged it or the developer who did not want to do that?
It's us that discouraged it. The overall plan that was approved for Old Webster removed drive-throughs from the district because it's supposed to be a walkable, pedestrian-friendly district. And so at the time when an overall plan was put together, it specifically removed all drive-through uses from the D, which is the primary zoning of Old Webster.
But
Isn't
we could
there a
change that.
drive-through of the bank?
That's what so when they rezoned to PC, they asked for that. That was the only way they could get the drive-through for the bank. And the review that went through was the primary drive-through was going to be off of a secondary street versus the main street. And the conversation again was it was not automatically allowed, and their only way to get it was to do a PC planned commercial with multiple uses. I will tell you that the lot and building and everything is not designed in any way, shape, or form to have a drive-through. You would not be able to, for that building on the right-hand side, come in, and it's not designed for it. There is no way to work with the way that the plan has been done to have a drive-through coffee shop in the secondary building.
But what about in the future PC zoned areas? Would we not maybe be okay with the drive-through?
Well, each PC comes in individually and requests what they would like to ask for at the time that they come through, and you make that determination based on a traffic study or a parking study or multiple other things like that. So that would be something that would be addressed on a case-by-case basis within the plan that they are asking for.
So are we discouraging the consideration for that simply because it's not something that exists in our?
No, we were discouraging it because that is what our plans state. The overall development plan for Old Webster is that this is our walkable district, that Old Orchard, Watson, and other locations do have the ability to have drive-throughs.
Is this the structure that was originally one and then divided into two?
You mean the lots?
Yeah, no, I guess not the lots. I thought the original plan, when this first came before us, there was going to be one big structure.
No, it's never had. No, it's always had two buildings. One was the bank, and the other was a mixed-use building with the option of being office with retail. And
why was? Wasn't there something that why the second building is coming now instead of back then?
They did sell off, and they did create two lots in this district. So it's a different person who is developing the second building.
We kind of got bamboozled by Regions.
Regions isn't the owner of the development.
Well, tomato in my book.
So I'm so curious about so if we do another PC, we have to go through everything again and would reconsider whether a drive-through is allowed for any business?
Well, again, I think, are you meaning if we wanted to go through this specific PC? PC is a site-specific zoning that a person comes in and brings a development plan and asks for uses, just like the one that you saw last night.
Yeah.
They specifically asked for
a different PC. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, they come in and they bring us a plan and say, I would like this, and this, and this is how I'm going to make it all work. And then we look to see do we need a traffic study? Do we need to understand their parking? Is that mix of uses really a good mix of uses with evening time and daytime uses? And so it's that combination. And then the Plan Commission and the City Council can put restrictions on what they can and cannot do, especially when looking at traffic and other impacts. So one of the issues with this site is it does not come to a good intersection. If you think about people coming out, this isn't something that you want to have a natural drive-through of a very intense use, which is why this use wasn't put in originally, and why we did discourage drive-through uses in this lot.
Got it.
So the developer of the property did ask for a drive-through?
No, they didn't. But we had
no,
they didn't. We had conversations with them when they first came in and asked for the uses. It did not include bakery, and it didn't include, I think, personal and family and household services. They asked for offices, general retail shops, the drive-up establishment for the ATM, VTM, and the financial institution. Those were the 4 that they asked for. Staff recommended adding the other 2 uses to try to be more inclusive, that if different types of tenants came through, that they wouldn't have to keep coming back to us. Right. And then they did come through with this coffee shop, and we do have a specific use of a coffee shop. So if we have a specific use listed, you don't get to just say, well, but it really falls under a retail business. If it is specifically listed in the code, that's the one use that they do have to have listed if they want to get that business.
Go ahead.
So in staff's recommendations, I'm going to show you that we've only made 2 changes to the ordinance that was approved by the council previously. The 2 changes, if you would like to move this forward and would recommend approving it, would be to add the use G for coffee shop, no drive-through, to the permitted uses. And then all the other setbacks would remain the same: minimum parking spaces, the access, the height of the structures, all of the things related to the fire department and their access and safety. And then when you get all the way to the end, we did make a recommendation. When this was approved, it was before you all approved performance standards to deal with noise and lighting and other issues. And so we felt it would be better to replace the item that had been at the bottom of the ordinance that related to some noise and light, and put in that they would be in compliance with all the new performance standards that are now in place. So those are the only changes that are being proposed to the existing ordinance in terms of amendments.
Mara, can I recommend another change? Go back up to number 1. Number A, you have financial institutions, including banks, savings and loans, stockbrokers, and title companies.
They have to request the use that is listed in our codes. So that is the use that's written in our codes.
If I want to put a credit union there?
I believe that falls under that in terms of the definition of financial institutions.
Well, so does banks.
I understand that's.
But it says including.
Yeah, including banks, credit unions, savings and loans, stockbrokers, and title and companies.
If we make that change, we do need to make that change to the entire zoning code. This is a definition that we cleaned up, and a title for a use that we cleaned up a couple of years ago.
So if I wanted to put a credit union there, I would have no problem with number 8.
Correct. It would fall under financial institutions.
Okay. I don't know if we still have savings and loans in the city. Okay, great. Thank you.
Do you want to continue, Mara?
That was it. If you do want to close the public hearing, at some point we can get to the exhibit list. I know that the applicant is here and available to speak.
So before we close the public hearing, we could ask Mr. Golterman if he would like to speak this evening.
Sure. I'll just reiterate what the concept is. And Mara, I don't know if you could CDs have been submitted to the city, correct? Construction drawings for this second building?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Yeah, so just so you all know, the intent of this building and what you'll see here, if you deem to approve this use, would be approximately a small coffee shop up front, obviously utilizing the patio area, plus or minus probably about 1,000 square feet in totality. And then the back half of the building will be for professional service. I have to wave to my kid to say goodnight. For a professional service office in the back. So it'll be a locally owned coffee shop, obviously driven by the neighborhood. Hopefully people will walk to it. So we don't perceive that there will be a heavy parking requirement by any means for this use. And then obviously because part of the appeal here is because there's a patio up front, is that, and obviously where trends are going these days with retail, is that obviously a nice outside seating area for people to be able to, enjoy their coffee up front. So just so everyone knows, that's the intent behind the building and what you'll see on what's going up on that site.
Do you have an owner yet for the coffee shop?
Yeah, actually, the owner will be the same as the person that is actually who owns the site and is owning that's going to be officing in the back as well. So he's going to be owning the coffee shop up front, and it will be locally owned. So it won't be a chain or anything like that, just so you all know.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Gary, it looks like somebody has their hand up.
Hang on. We're going to go to the public now. Let me first ask if Katie and Jen have any comments to be read yet about this particular project. If not, somebody tell me where you find the hands up.
We do have one comment here.
If you go to the attendee list, Mayor, and click on the attendee list, it will show a list of people who are on board. You will see the raised hand to the
It's
right
up.
of the name.
Okay, yep, I see it on the attendee. It's Greg Cudahy.
Okay,
Greg,
we do have a written one just to read in.
okay, let's do the written one, and Greg, hang in there. We'll get you next.
All right.
Go ahead.
This is from Dave Buck, and it was received today in the afternoon. To Mayor, City Council, and City staff. What I like about this proposal is that at least something is going to go into this unused vacant space. What I do not like about it is the same thing I didn't like about it back when Gerber Funeral Home was still standing. This lot is prime property right in the prime shopping and business district of Old Webster. And what did we settle for? Another bank. We in this space deserve better. This city needs another bank like a hole in the head. And now, with all due respect to Mr. Golterman and DCM management, what he is asking us again to settle for? What is he asking us again to settle for? Another coffee shop when Clover and the Bee is right across the street, along with Old Webster's Bread Co., Parkmore and Straub's, and not to mention the nearby Starbucks, Einstein's, Boardwalk Cafe, McDonald's, and gas stations. In short, Webster's coffee demand has plenty of supply. Instead, may I please suggest to use a little imagination and creativity to come up with a new idea that's truly different, unique, and adds real value to our community. I suggest doing some research with a few residents. They have lots of good ideas. Peace, Dave.
Thank you. All right, Greg Cudahy, you may speak. How do we do this, Jen? Jennifer?
I'm working on it.
Oh, you're working on it. Okay.
All right, here's allowed to talk. There we go. Okay.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So my comments are not about this project specifically. Should I hold my comments?
What are they about,
later?
Greg?
I'm sorry?
What are they about?
Oh, they're about a project at my residence.
Okay, then let's hang on to that for remarks of visitors, because this is a public hearing with public
Sure.
comments about this specifically. We'll call on you for remarks of visitors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, then let's go ahead and Neil, Mara, if you want to get rid of your screen share here, and Neil, if you'd like to do your magic to close this hearing.
Yes, at the close of the hearing, Mayor, there are a series of exhibits we would like to move, be introduced into the record. Number one is the council staff report by Danny Jandusa, the planner for the meeting date, the planner for a meeting date of October the 6th of 2020. Number two is the applicant's written statement submitted on September the 4th of 2020. Number three are the existing conditions and facilities removal plan dated June 19th of 2020. Number four is a conceptual site and grading plan dated June 19th, 2020. Number five is a conceptual architectural elevation of 23 West Lockwood Avenue, East Conceptual plans of 23 West Lockwood Avenue, East Building, dated June 2nd of 2020. Number seven is a copy of the lot split plat recorded January the 2nd, 2020. Number eight is the letter of Dave Buck, which was read as part of the comments dated the 6th. Number nine is the Director of Planning and PowerPoint before Council, October the 6th of 2020, Webster Groves.
And Dave Buck's letter.
Pardon me? Is there something we missed, Katie?
No, it's just Dave Buck's letter that we just sent to the record.
You mentioned that.
You mentioned that. Great.
Right. All right. And with that, the public hearing is closed. And Councilmember Bliss, would you call for the first and second reading of 9133, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9133.
Second.
Where's Neil?
I'm sorry, I'm freezing up for just a moment. Bill 9133, first reading. An ordinance amending a PN commercial district at 23 and 29 West Lockwood on an approximately 0.acre tract of and matters related thereto, and repealing ordinance 904.
Are there any comments or questions? If not, Neil, can you do that second reading, please?
Bill 9.
You're fading out on
133,
us.
second reading. Am I back?
Yeah,
Okay.
you're gone again.
Bill 9133, second reading. An ordinance amending a PC Plan 20 and 29 West Lockwood on an approximately 0.79 acre of land and matters related thereto, and repealing ordinance 9042.
All right, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr. Golderman. We're going to continue with the second public hearing this evening, and that is a continued hearing on the zoning code text amendment for parking development standards. Proposed amendments include changes and additions to sections 53020, 047, 057, 067, 077, 53.1, 17, 15, 7180 through 189, 53, 233, and 53, 243 of the zoning ordinance in order to clarify and update regulations for parking development standards in residential, commercial, industrial, multiple family residence district. All right.
So I had no presentation to make. I was simply, this was the continuation so that comments could be shared. Ahead of time, I believe I only know of two potential things that staff needs to continue to research. One item that Councilmember Arnold sent to me, and I believe the item that Mayor Welch had at the previous meeting. This was going to be the opportunity for any other questions, comments. I do have all the slides from the last time, so I can move to any of them if there are ones that you need me to move to. But this was just the opportunity for questions, both from council and if anyone from the public wanted to speak.
I'm still concerned about the 10-foot driveway, and it is in here in, I don't know, remember what section it is, but it's here. And I still have an objection to that.
And we can bring additional information in regards to that at the next meeting. We would request that you hold this open again because we didn't really get much feedback from anyone, and we wanted to try to research all the outstanding items together. I know that Councilwoman Arnold had a question potentially about the parking and vehicle storage and signs on vehicles. And so we were going to do some additional research on that. And then we were going to provide some feedback from other communities about the driveway width and show you what other communities are doing in regards to that.
I'll just take a moment and speak for myself. It's not really a question, although it was very nice of you to characterize it that way. I would really like for us to consider removing, and so it's on page 10, section 53.183A4, which says when stored on premises, and this is the requirement that you can't have any signage on a passenger vehicle that's parked, any commercial signage on a passenger vehicle that's parked at your home. I continue to believe that you know, if we're going to have people here all the time to work on our houses that have commercial signage on them, that we ought to have people feel free to park their work vehicles that are passenger vehicles. I'm not talking about heavy equipment here, at their homes as well.
It's parking in front of the house, right? Like if I had something on my car and behind my house, it'd be okay.
I think the way Mara can answer, but I think the way it's written, it still has to be covered or concealed by vegetation if it's in the back. But Mara, you're more an expert than I am.
We had tried to tie it to the home occupation, which you all had allowed that it would be, or had clarified that it would be that it's, if it was in the rear, it was screened in some way by vegetation or in a garage.
This does seem different to me. I mean, I'm in the same mindset that if someone is an employee and they drive a commercial vehicle, they should be able to park it at their home. And I would think, for me, I guess those restrictions would be looser than if you were the owner of a home-based business, or they would be different.
And how are we distinguishing? I mean, what if someone is a realtor and they have a sign on their car, and so they drive home and park in their driveway or in front of the street? Am I thinking of this wrong?
Karen, you got to speak up a little louder for me.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
hard to hear you, Karen.
Okay, I'm sorry. So or what if someone is a realtor, or and they have advertisement on their car or on their door? So are we saying that they can't park that vehicle at their home, in their driveway or in front of their home? Or am I not reading this correctly?
That's what the code has said in the past, that you cannot keep vehicles overnight on the street that have signage and other things related to vehicles that are for businesses. And then the code has also in the past said that your vehicles that have signage should be either parked in a garage, or we had changed it related to or tied to home occupation so that we didn't make one looser or easier or greater a problem. They were similar to each other, that they would have to either put magnets over it to hide the signage, or that they were screening it from with landscaping. And then there is another section in the code that allows an administrative approval if you can prove a hardship so that you wouldn't be required to build a garage just to put your vehicle into.
Did we distinguish between the size of the vehicle so that if you're driving a car, it's a whole lot different than if you're driving a 25 passenger van?
Yes, we did. Last time we talked about this, we went through the size of the vehicle, the weight, and all of that.
And I think Mara's simplified it right now. Whoops, did I lose you? Because somehow things just...
No.
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry. My computer just went different. In the definition of a commercial or industrial vehicle, the way it's defined right now is shall mean any vehicle or equipment used for commercial or industrial purposes with or without signage, with the exception of a passenger vehicle or station wagon bearing no signage. I mean, you could just remove the bearing no signage from that definition, and then we've defined it as the exception is a passenger vehicle or station wagon.
So that would allow you to have a passenger vehicle or a station wagon, but not a big, heavy dump truck.
I think Mara has something to say about that.
Oh, no, I'm just listening.
Oh, I thought you looked, I thought I saw a reaction there based on, you know, I think to some degree, right, that still is a matter of interpretation and enforcement. Like, if I drove my minivan's not defined there, but it is the modern day equivalent of a station wagon. So, I mean, I guess it depends on how specific we want to be in defining what that other kind of vehicle was. And Everson's right, when we did home-based businesses, he and I spent a lot of time looking at sizes and weights and what was passenger versus, I mean, and we could come up with a really complicated definition if we needed to. I'm personally not convinced we need to.
And the only thing that I'll say is that, you know, it usually comes down to it's not something that we drive around looking for because it's after hours. I don't have staff out there driving around looking for these. It's only if we get a complaint. And it's a complaint after hours that then I have to have someone do overtime and go after hours to go look at it, or the police have to go look at it. So it's not something that I'm not saying we're married to it, but I know that we do get complaints about larger vehicles, you know, overnight parked in driveways that are covered in signage.
So
tolerance thing.
Let's sort this out then.
I don't believe that we need to sort things out today. I was going to come back with what maybe some other cities are doing, as well as looking at the definition again, and then confirming if we do make a change in either the section that Laura had recommended or even in the definition, does it make an impact to any other codes? So those were the things I was going to look at between now and the next council meeting.
All right.
And Mara, I do think it matters for the home-based business. The 53.206M is the reference. Because it may make them inconsistent, and
yes,
you will be the better judge of how to make something consistent.
Yeah, we'll check on that.
Okay. All right. So we'll take up at our next meeting this issue again, and I don't know if anybody's with me on the 10-foot driveway or not, but I sure am in opposition to requiring people to have a 10-foot wide driveway.
I'm with you on that one as well, Mayor.
I am too, Mayor.
So a couple of us are really concerned about that.
I'll provide some backup from other communities about what they're requiring and what they have in their codes, just so that you can see what others are doing at the next meeting.
That's fine. But I quite frankly, I'm much more concerned about all of the neighbors and everybody else in this community who is living now with a 7 or an 8-foot wide driveway, and it's fine. And the sustainability issues of requiring people to have all that extra concrete or paved surface really bothers me.
Mayor, what's the alternative that you're suggesting, or are you at this point?
I'm not at this point, but so far 7.5 and 8 feet have worked for most people in this community, and I certainly would like us to stick with that rather than requiring all that extra concrete.
So Mara, can you help us understand what we had before this last round in which 10 feet? Because that's already in the code, correct?
So the Public Works Department in their codes, which relate to and tie to St. Louis County, have a requirement that your curb cut, when you put in a new curb cut, it has to be 10 feet in width. It also can't be greater than 24 feet in width. So there's a residential code section that says you should be between 10 and 24. So what we had found was people would come in with a new driveway, and they would not have seen that code section because it's not in the zoning ordinance, it's not in the building code, and they would get confused and they get frustrated. So when we updated the building code, which already had sections in it regarding the material, the slope, that you could use pervious surfaces, all of that was in there. We added that to there for a consistency to match what Public Works was already requiring.
So
that's a curb. Yeah. Go ahead.
So we did not have a required driveway width until the 10 feet went in. That's my question. What came before the 10 feet?
We have always been, just as staff, as things were coming in, saying, hey, you have a 10-foot curb cut, match that and keep going back. Just because that's what was in the code before. So no, there was not anything specifically listed. It was always presumed that because you started out at 10 feet, you could get narrower if you did a Hollywood drive. So you'd have grass on either side and you'd have your two areas where your vehicle wheels would be. But it would still have a 10-foot between it, because a lot of times what we would have is someone would come in and say, I have this many feet, but they wouldn't necessarily understand what that meant if a neighbor put a fence up on the property line. And so then we would have neighbor on neighbor issues. We've had a few lawsuits going back and forth between neighbors. And then when I checked with other cities, they've been dealing with the same thing, where the driveways are kind of, most of the communities are actually dealing with the problem of, like, for example, Clayton. Clayton actually says, your really, really, really wide driveway that you're building in the back of your lot has to go down to 10 feet when you get to the curb, because they don't want big curb cuts and they require you to bring it down to 10 feet. Chesterfield, Rock Hill, Brentwood, they all have a problem that people are trying to build too much concrete. So they are dealing with a maximum. They've never really had to deal with a minimum. Everybody wants to build these, 24-foot wide, massive driveways. So I think it's this weird balance. And then just trying to deal with, we've had a few where something's been approved to access in the rear yard. And now, because they don't actually have a legal means to get a vehicle back to it, they're stuck.
But can we deal with that? So when that issue occurs, rather than requiring that 10 foot is a standard, and I mean, and generally when we're looking at the curb cuts, and I may not be understanding how this works, but isn't there typically then the sidewalk between the curb cut and where someone's driveway starts?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
So I don't understand why then we would mandate that the driveway meets the curb cut, because you're going to have a sidewalk in between.
Well, no, but your property line is sometimes at the back of curb, and then your property line sometimes is even further back than that. So not everybody has a sidewalk, one, and not everybody has their property line butt up against the back of the sidewalk, even if there is a sidewalk. And so it relates to a turning radius, and it relates to the access of what Public Works and cities require in their right of way in terms of the radius that you can get for the slopes of that curb cut.
I understand all of that, but we're a historic community where people have lived with these smaller driveways and wider curb cuts for such a long period of time. And now you know, we're imposing this regulation on people who are building new homes. We are also imposing it on people who want to put a garage in their backyard. It just seems out of character with both sustainability as well as historic preservation. I just don't see it. I mean, if you have someone who has a gravel driveway, for example, and now suddenly they want to pave it, they're going to have to pave it at 10 feet instead of 7.5. And all it does is create more water runoff and less green space, and it means people take out their bushes and their lawn, and I'm really adamant about this.
I'll bring some additional information at the next meeting if that works.
All right.
Can I ask one question really quick? So Mara, is the whole purpose just to meet the 10-foot requirement for the street cutoff?
No, it's not that. It relates to a vehicle that when you open your car doors and are trying to get out of your vehicle, you know, there's not mud and grass and other things that you're getting out into because, you know, it just comes to a basic standard of what you would want your car to. Our code says your car has to be on a paved surface. So the basic minimum of a paved surface usually is something that we think of as about the size of a parking space. A parking space is 9 feet wide. If you only have 9 feet and that parking space has got a fence on the property line on one side and a house on the other side, you can't really get your car door open. So it was just a basic standard. I looked up other communities. I looked up, you know, 5 or 6 different major cities. Most of them had 10 foot as the minimum requirement for a driveway, even in some other communities.
What does a 10-foot driveway do to enhance the character of our community, though?
It simply is a means of where a vehicle can be on a paved surface. It's really, that's all it comes down to.
Mara, wasn't the attempt to also try to get closer to county roads as well?
All of our parking changes were to try to get closer to county. County has some really good requirements on turning radius to get out of parking lots. We were having a lot of questions related to commercial parking lots. We didn't have anything in our code. It said you must have 1 parking space behind the front line of your house. And so, you know, someone would come to us and say, well, I have 6 feet here. Well, what is a basic standard? What can a vehicle sit on? And as cars are getting larger and larger, trying to figure out what is that standard. So you approve the first person to put a parking space in, and it holds a Mini Cooper, and then the next person comes in and they've now have a Suburban. And then we have a lot of people that have these shared driveways that have worked fabulously for decades. And then the neighbors sell and they don't like each other. And the next thing you know, they're putting a fence down the middle of it, or they're tearing it up. We even had one developer who bought a lot and tried to tear up the shared driveway portion on the developer lot. And it would mean that the neighbor wasn't going to be able to get back to their garage. And thank goodness they had a shared driveway agreement already recorded with county. That prevented them from losing all access to their garage.
I think we've covered this enough, so we need to move on. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I think we need to have a motion to continue this public hearing. Would someone like to make a motion that this public hearing be continued until the next meeting on October the, what is that, 21st?
May I make a motion to continue this discussion on the meeting of October 21st? Is open.
October 20th.
October 20th.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. Councilmember Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Emerson?
Yes.
Smith?
Mayor Welch?
Yes. All right, we will continue with the public hearing on our next council meeting. All right, our next agenda item is remarks of visitors, and I do believe we have quite a few. Am I correct with that?
Correct. One moment, please.
Hello. Am I reading first? Yes. All right. The first one we have here is from Kent and Candy Stallings, and that was sent on September 25th. Honorable council members and Madam Mayor, we're writing this note to state that we are wholeheartedly opposed to the Webster redevelopment project currently being reviewed by the council. We moved from unincorporated West County to Webster Groves in 1998 after our children went to college and began their lives as adults. We love our Clark neighbors and everything about our town. Webster is the epitome of the peaceful, neighbor-loving, welcoming small town and is the envy of thousands of communities in Missouri and around the country. It has grown over the years by respecting its citizens' opinions while strategically adding businesses and carefully expanding housing and residential construction, which improves the quality of life in the community. We would support a rational, thoughtful, responsibly designed mixed-use development, but the current proposal is the antithesis of Webster's values and a well-earned national reputation as a welcoming community. Please do the right thing by reducing the size and scope and reversing the negative impact of this project. It is by all measures a horrible proposition as it stands. Webster Groves deserves better. Respectfully, Kent and Candy Stallings. Okay, next we have Tony Clausen. Oh, sorry, Lauren and Tony Clausen, sent on September 25th. Good evening. I'm writing in full support of the proposed redevelopment for a northern half of downtown Webster. Even without anchor tenants announced, this is a transformative project. As a current city resident looking hard at relocating and purchasing in Webster, this is exactly the type of development that pulls me and my wife to move. Creating a true 20-minute city with a robust city center will ensure long-term stability and vibrancy. This goes a long way to achieving that, and I think the city will be even better as a result. I hope this outsider perspective provides some insight into attracting new long-term residents and the direction of future city developments. I look forward to watching this project unfold. Sincerely, Lauren and Tony Clausen. And then we have Hannah Wilson, sent on October the 2nd. My name is Hannah Wilson, and I live across the street from Larson Park on Oak Street in Webster Groves. My boyfriend and I have been in our home for 3 years and have grown to love our neighborhood and city. It is an affordable house for us at this time in our lives, and we very much want to be part of the Webster community. As you may know, there is significant development proposed for the area east of our home, and below are the main reasons we as Webster Groves residents are opposed to this project. Number one, multiple 7-story buildings that will completely alter the old Webster character and historical value. I cannot imagine the small business and restaurant owners of Webster would approve of this project, as they have all worked very hard to maintain the Main Street feel without creating an overly commercialized business district. Number two, destruction of the current wildlife and natural landscape in the area to attempt to create a natural area. So we want to destroy existing natural areas to make new ones. Number three, as a Webster resident yourself, I'm certain you have experienced the traffic and often unsafe pedestrian area on Rock Hill Road approaching the train tracks. The area is already very congested at Rock Hill Road and Lockwood. Many kids ride bikes, walk to school, and walk to a bus stop right at Rock Hill and Kirkham. Please consider voting down this project when given the opportunity and strongly opposing it along with our concerned group of Webster Groves residents. Thank you for considering this message. Have a great day. This next one is from Karen Moody and was received on the 2nd. I live in a neighborhood near the proposed development along Kirkham Avenue. I travel along Kirkham almost daily. Buildings towering 7 stories above the street will totally change the feeling of the neighborhood. The addition of 8 townhouses where one home now sits at Rock Hill Road and Kirkham Avenue would be hard to cram into that area. What would be the effect on Shady Creek and the brand new bridge over it? More underground parking? That would probably disturb the creek. Garage doors facing Kirkham? I like being able to walk from my home to see my mother at sunrise before COVID-19 and to shops in Old Webster. The density of this proposal would make it a more difficult challenge with more traffic. The density of this project would change the nearby neighborhoods of Webster Groves. Karen Moody. This next one is from Ann Yard and Scott Phillips, and it was received on the 5th. To the Mayor and City Council, we are homeowners at 465 Oak Street and we'd like to voice our opposition to the Old Webster redevelopment project. Our primary concerns are the excessive density and negative environmental impact of the current plans, which would plop an estimated 1,150 new residents and up to 8 7-story buildings adjacent to residential neighborhoods in Old Webster. In addition, the plan would decimate the existing wildlife corridor that follows Shady Creek. The developer has made it clear that neither of these problems will be addressed. They insist the density is necessary to provide amenities and affordable housing, and they value renovation of the Shady Creek green space as an attractive amenity for people over its importance as a wildlife habitat. That part of Shady Creek may not make it onto a postcard, but many animals call it home and would have no place to go. It's past time to stop chipping away at animal habitat. In addition, many mature trees would be removed, only some replaced, with decades to wait until they reached equivalent maturity. We would ask you to walk down along Kirkham between Rock Hill and Gore. Look up at those trees and realize that in a year you could be looking up at 7-story buildings and the trees could be gone. Does this fit the character of Webster Groves? As for the density, it is disappointing to hear the only way we can offer affordable housing and add public amenities is to put up with a development so wildly out of scale with its surrounding community. We were shocked to hear that only 10% of the housing will be designated affordable housing. It's frustrating because there are so many versions of a more modest development project that we and I believe our neighbors could get behind. What about a couple of modestly scaled apartment buildings with a larger percentage designated for workforce housing? A couple of modestly scaled retail facilities and a multi-use outdoor facility for farmers markets or small concerts. Perhaps another developer could come up with more creative plans that respect our environment, our history, and our quality of life. We look forward to engaging with you further as the planning and approval process continues. Sincerely, Ann Yard and Scott Phillips. And then the last one I have here is from Dave Buck and was received on the 5th. Mayor, council, and city staff. Assuming the weather cooperates and there are no more COVID spikes, Webster Grove's first ever Porch Fest will be held Sunday, October 18th from 4 to 6 p.m. immediately following the Old Webster Business District Walktober event from noon to 4 that same day. Porch Fest is an outdoor walkable, free and fun live music event featuring 21 different music performers spread out and playing from the front porches of 21 gracious and enthusiastic homeowners in the neighborhood bordered by South Gore and South Gray, including 3 connecting cross streets, West Cedar, West Swan, and West Jackson. Jerry, please know that I remain hopeful that your husband Pat and his Rockin' Docs combo can join us and play at your house. Please keep me posted. One important observation, I am a complete stranger to many homeowners in this neighborhood. Yet when I was going door to door and inquiring if they had interest in sharing their front porch, I was blown away how friendly, kind, welcoming, and inviting they all were. Some came right out to meet me on their front walk. Some were sitting on their porch and invited me up to talk. When I got home, I told my wife, Barb, that it was a truly life-affirming experience that made my day and made me feel so proud and lucky to live in Webster Groves. I love Porch Fest because it embodies the meaning of the word community, to share together as one. Our performers are playing for free and sharing their time and talent. Our homeowners are sharing their front porches, and our audience is sharing its time and appreciation for live music they are hungry for, and to equally appreciative performers who have not played in front of a live audience for months. At the musician's request, we will have one giant tip jar to collect cash and check donations to Webster Rock Hill Ministries that serve the needy in our community. Final note, if this first Porch Fest is successful, our goal every year is to move and hold it in other Webster neighborhoods to share the love and spread the music. Peace, Dave. All right, and then I think we have a hand up.
From Greg Cudahy.
Yes, all right. Okay, should be allowed to talk now.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Gregory Cudahy, and I am an architect, and I teach at Washington University. I have been in Webster for almost 20 years now, and 5 years ago, I had started a project, and that project I thought had been resolved with the previous building commissioner, Mike Harney, and previous building inspector, Joe Rodriguez. And we are selling our house on Bacon Avenue currently. And we had a list of quite a few things, and one of which is this permit issue. Madam Mayor, I'm not sure if you remember me reaching out to you back when that happened. Yeah. So everything on this list has been taken care of. But now I'm at a hardship because I've tried to get the building department to work with me. It's been over a month and I'm not getting much of a response. Just that I need these permits, and councilwomen and men and Madam Mayor, I've had many successful award-winning projects in Webster Groves. I take my work very seriously. That I have everything completed on the list from the occupancy inspection. The only thing that is outstanding is from work that was 5 to 6 years ago, and I can't seem to get the current department members to work with me or review my old drawings that I had submitted, or I understand that the current building commissioner is out of town until the 12th, but we are closing on Bacon Avenue quite soon. And I just feel like I have my back up against the wall, and it's created quite a hardship. And I've invested a lot of myself professionally and personally into Webster. And I've raised my girls in Webster, and I just would like some help. I'm just asking for your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. I think that's the only hand up that we have, correct? So let's go on to our next agenda item. We have new business and unfinished business, bill number 9132. Do I have a council member who would call for that reading? Karen, you're unmuted. Could you call for the third reading of 9132, please?
Wait a minute, I lost it.
Just call for the third reading of bill number 9132 and its subsequent adoption.
Mayor, I would like to call for the third reading of bill 9132 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9132, third reading. An ordinance of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending the City Code, Chapter 4, Article 20, Section 4.1200, Police Community Engagement Board created, and Section 4.1205, Membership, to add a regular member position and amend the qualifications for the youth liaison, and repealing Ordinance 9129.
Any questions or issues? Call for the vote.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold.
Yes.
All right, 9132 has been passed. Let's see who's unmuted over here. David, would you like to call for the first and second of 9134, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9134.
Second.
Thank you.
Bill 9134, first reading. An ordinance of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending Chapter 60, Section 60.680, protective headgear required of operators and passengers of motorcycles.
Do we need to do this, Neil?
Well, when you say do we need to do this, do you mean do we need to pass such an ordinance?
Yes.
Well, we are passing an ordinance that's different from that which exists with the state of Missouri, which has now liberalized its approach, and maybe that's the wrong word, has reduced its limitations regarding wearing headgear. As a lawyer who handles a lot of personal injury cases, I can't tell you how many motorcycle accidents I've seen in my lifetime that involve head injuries because people aren't wearing helmets. So I don't mean to weigh in on whether or not it's wise or not, but I think I'm making it clear as to how I feel about it. Can we do it? I'm not sure that we can run afoul necessarily of the state laws in that regard, although we can set certain rules and regulations regarding the operation of a motor vehicle in Webster Groves. But we run afoul of that state law, and frankly, I think if we were challenged on it, it would be problematic.
but we are going to try to go ahead with it.
I am fully in favor of going ahead with it.
So, all right, any other questions? Then-
Yes, so what happens if a non-resident rides through Webster?
And they get a ticket in Webster and they go to the courts and say, I don't live in Webster, but I'm passing through Webster. That would be the problem I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, do we want to create that type of problem?
Mhm.
Well, you're the council. I can't make that decision.
I was talking to the council.
Yes.
So Neil, if I don't have a problem creating that kind of problem, do we have another problem in terms of defending a lawsuit if somebody wants to challenge us here?
Well, in terms of liability, if someone challenged it, could they strike it down? Yes. Would that mean that the city might be liable for money damages? If that were the case, my opinion would be no in a situation like that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, do we have a compelling reason to do the third reading tonight? Just
You say not to do the third reading or to?
no,
to do?
go ahead and do the third reading tonight.
What would the compelling reason be, Pam?
I guess I was thinking because we are not doing what Missouri says.
Well, maybe if you thought of it as a public safety issue, you might.
Yeah,
be able
public
to-
safety issue.
Okay.
Actually, the way the ordinance is written is to comply with what the state wants, not to not comply. It's not written against the state, it's written with the state. That's why we need to have this
Okay.
ordinance in place to comply with them, not to oppose them.
So currently the state requires helmets.
No,
No.
currently, recent state law is that they no longer require helmets, and so now we're changing our ordinances to comply with the state's recent change.
Well,
Okay, so
actually, they do
No.
require helmets. You can ride for a certain period of time, and if you've gotten a certain number of years experience, then you can take off your helmet.
So
this one-
a compelling reason would be for safety reasons.
Yes.
Would you let Dale insert a few comments, please?
My only comment is, and I agree with Neil, but and he's the attorney, not me, but our process has always been that we can't have an ordinance on the books that's contrary to the state law unless they give us an out on it. And our interpretation of it was that we have to mirror the statute. It's not enforceable. So we really, even though the ordinance is on the books, it's hard for our officers to write a citation because we know that when it gets to court, the judge is going to throw it out because we don't really have the authority to enforce that ordinance. If I'm wrong about that, Neil, let me know. And
No, you're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
I agree with you completely. I disagree with the state's new statute. I think it's irresponsible, but as it was with the weapons thing, our hands are kind of tied on it. We cannot have an ordinance that's more restrictive than the state statute.
Yeah, and I should have been clear on that. We are in compliance with state statute in that regard. So going back to Emerson's original question, I'd missed this part when I glanced at it in the first instance. It's a staggered rule, meaning that early on, all people who initially get their licenses have to have helmets. Okay, it's after a period of time that you can't. And we're mirroring that in here. I just think it's a stupid idea on the state level, but this does mirror it. So.
I forget if it was the state of Missouri or another state, but a legislator got on the floor of the House and spoke about how he deserves freedom to feel the wind in his hair when he rides his motorcycle.
I wonder how he's going to feel when his head hits the ground, though.
Yeah, it's not going to be the wind that's going to cause him the injury. So.
Yeah.
So we're gonna place signs at the city border.
We're consistent with state law. So again, it's not a problem in that regard. I really do think it's a situation where, again, it's a stupid law in its first instance, but we are merely mirroring it. And I agree with the chief in that regard. Having taken a little closer look at it, I think we're safe in doing it. We certainly won't run afoul of anyone regard. And if somebody challenges it, again, then there you go. But it's the staggered part that I think is stupid, but that's me.
So I don't know if everyone on council feels that this is a compelling reason for a third reading, because we'd have to have everybody agree to that, or if we want to just stick with the first and second reading tonight.
I like to do just the first and second.
Okay.
I'd also like us to consider in some of our messaging and public safety things to start talking about helmets is a good idea. I mean, I know we have to go along with this, but I'm not certain that any of us really think it's a great idea. And if there's something we can do to encourage the use of helmets, I think that would be responsible on our part.
Great. All right, let's do that second reading.
Bill 9134, second reading. An ordinance of the City of Webster Groves, Missouri, amending Chapter 60, Section 60.680, protective headgear required of operators and passengers of motorcycles.
All right, does anyone want to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Mayor, can I just ask one question? I'm not going to object to anything in the consent agenda. I was just going to ask if we know, it looks like the costs for the sculptures are on us in terms of moving and transporting. Do we have any sense of and placing them, what that might look like?
We talked this morning about maybe $500, because we can do a lot of this staff-wise. The sculptures were moved by Normandy's Public Works folks, so we still have to figure that out. And if we put Earth Rabbit at the recreation complex, this is what part of what the choice there was, also that it is cost effective. We can pour our own concrete pad and place it there ourselves, so it shouldn't be very costly at all.
Thank you very much.
Good. So if no one objects, Emerson, you are unmuted. Would you call for approval of the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right, so the consent agenda has been approved. We have no appointments to boards and commissions, and we do need to go into an executive closed session. Laura, would you like to call for that, please?
It's under, Laura, it's under Section 1 and under real estate purchase and contract negotiation, which is 3. No, I'm sorry, it's 2. 1 and 2.
Can I just ask, do we not have to appoint, because we made the change to the police community engagement board, is that, we had a person sort of in limbo, right? While we did that?
Angela's already on.
Okay.
She knew she was done, so I told her. So she's already on the roster. She's good.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't skip that.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session regarding number 1, attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 1, close paren, and number 2, real estate, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 2, close paren, and number 4, negotiated contract, Missouri Statute 610.021, open paren 12, close paren.
There you go.
I'm sorry, was there a second?
Yes.
All right.
Jim got it.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Mayor Welsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
All right, we're going to leave this. Yeah, you all have a new Zoom. And for the attendees, thank you for coming this evening. We appreciate your interest in our city council business. Thank you.